back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, that we're covering today, and we are covering the last two Stanley Cup champions in this episode, the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Two teams
Our two favorite teams.
Yeah, notoriously not either of our favorite teams. You being a Sharks fan, me being a Lightning fan. So today. Do you have a preference? Do you want to start, or would you like me?
I'll let you go first. Today. I'll be a nice guy.
All right, we will start off with the Vegas Golden Knights. Like I said, Cup champions just 2 seasons ago. Currently projected to have negative $3.7 million in cap space. I don't believe that takes into account. I do think it takes into account Robin Lehner because it has him on LTIR already, but
I don't think so because remember Montreal when we looked at Montreal. I'm pretty sure Carey Price was still, but
yeah, I'm not totally sure. Maybe it does. It would make sense because we're actually pretty close to the start of the season. I was just looking at the rest of the roster to see if there is anyone else obviously going to be on LTIR. Which is pretty hard to
take your pick.
It's hard to tell with this team. That I know
of.
I don't think any of their guys really going to be on LTIR to start the year.
As far as I know, I don't think so.
Yeah, I know quite a few of them had surgeries or lingering injuries going into the offseason, but I think they're all good to go. I think Hurdle's going to be back full time. I think everyone's all healthy, but yeah, I mean this team is a really solid offensive core, and they do have a lot of 1-year UFAs. So it will be very interesting to see what this team looks like comparing from to like a year from now, or even just July 1st next year, because they've got a lot of guys that are expiring. So there's not a ton of core pieces besides both their goaltenders, Aiden Hill and Ilya Samsonov, and then Braden McNabb and the big one, Shea Theodore, are all UFAs after this season. But other than that, most of their main guys in for another 8 more. Mark Stone for 3, Tomas Hertl for 6, William Karlsson for 3. Like they've got a lot of these guys for at least around 3 years seems to be the average amount. So they're set to still be competitive for the next 2 years, but I think a lot of people are starting to cool on them a bit. They've lost a little bit of their depth, and they've been consistently successful since they came to the league. So they're kind of having to pay some of those guys that have made them successful for a long time, and it's cost them in their depth. And they don't have near as many ways as some teams to restock the shelves. They are missing their next 2 first-round picks. Their next first-round pick they have is in 2027. They also don't have their third. They do have they're missing some draft capital on top of that. So we'll see if they can replicate their past success. But I think people are a little bit down on them compared to years past, and they barely made the playoffs last year. They had a 6-point cushion, but if St. Louis won a couple more games, Vegas was wild card 2. Like they were the next team to be knocked out. So,
yeah, and worth noting their 2025 and 2026 first round picks are both also unprotected. So they for sure don't have them, and I don't see them being a team selling off any of their guys and getting those draft picks back. So
really,
they're kind of
unprotected, like not top 3, nothing.
Nope, that
Very
either one.
Interesting.
That was
I don't
that was
think
getting Hertl and Hannafin at the deadline. Yeah, neither pick is protected. They're both completely unprotected. So, well, no, actually, the Calgary one could have been because they traded the 2025 first to Calgary, and that was the whole like, if like, and then they ended up trading the 2025 first to San Jose, so Calgary got like bumped back. So technically,
Right.
like there was somewhat protection, but after they made the second trade and trade away their other first round pick, it was like, yeah, they're both now just completely unprotected. So like wherever the first round pick ends up, like we know that one in 2025 is with Nashville. Like Nashville just get wherever the pick ends up, and then same with Calgary in 2026, wherever Vegas ends up, like that pick is just going to Calgary no matter what. So
that's really interesting, and you got to wonder if because Calgary and San Jose are two teams that a lot of people are saying are going to be bottom 5 teams in the league this year. Like they're both going to be pretty low down there, but I wonder if you see a real uptick in how well they play, or at the very least how much effort is in their play against Vegas, because they've got their picks and they're completely unprotected. So you want them to lose as much as possible, as well as just being interdivisional rivals.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I would have to like do some deep diving, but I'm pretty sure this is like the first time that because like a lot of times like previously like first round picks would get traded and be unprotected, but it was really kind of the some deals with Ottawa, most notably like the Matt Duchene deal, and then when San Jose traded for Erik Karlsson, like those first rounders were unprotected, and then we know obviously Colorado ended up getting the 4th overall pick from Ottawa because it was unprotected, and then Ottawa got the 3rd overall from San Jose because it was unprotected.
Was that 4th overall pick? Was that Cale Makar?
Bowen Byram.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh man, that'd be bad.
Yeah, and so
still.
And so that's why we're kind of seeing now, like anytime a trade is pretty much made, it's always like, top 10 protected, top 3, like there's always some kind of protection. So that's why I thought it was really interesting when Vegas like not only traded one first round pick at the deadline last year, but both. And there's no protections on them. So they're working with, their couple of second round picks and couple of thirds. And that's really all they got. And they don't have the best prospect pool. Like there's a couple decent guys they have in the system, but nothing like, I would say their top prospect they have right now is, in my opinion, at best a B-, like a B- prospect. So, they're really kind of relying on what they've got on their NHL roster right now and the guys that they got, and
and that's how they've been since they entered the league. That's always been their MO. They entered the league, and fair play to them. In Las Vegas fashion, they said all in from the beginning, and they said we're gonna win now. And just every year they go out, get the biggest players they can, and they trade all their futures. And you know what? It's brought them a lot of continued success. So it's hard to argue too much with it. But
and thankfully for them, like they did win. They won the cup the previous season, because like if they didn't, they're kind of in that stage now where it's like, it's almost kind of like it's similar to kind of like what Washington and Pittsburgh are kind of going through now. It's like they're still trying to stay in the fight, but it's like your prospect pool is depleted, your picks, like and your core is just, it keeps getting older. You don't have really any young studs coming in. Like, so you're trying to make it work with what you got until eventually you're going to have to just blow it up and go into that inevitable
eventually the
rebuild.
Wheels fall off.
Yeah.
And they're not quite at that spot yet, but you can definitely see it on the horizon. If they had not won the cup 2 years ago, they might be the team in the league with the most pressure to win a cup.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like they're in that stage yet, but like you can kind of see it in your rearview mirror. Like it's slowly approaching up on them. I would say realistically 4 years left for them.
Honestly,
I think you're in about there. I think you're right around that 4-year mark, and then
I think that's even being generous, if I'm honest. Mark Stone's 32, Karlsson's 31. Petrangelo's a big part of that team. He's 34. Braden McNabb's a decent part of it. He's 33. They've got quite a few guys that are quite up there. I assume they're going to re-sign Shea Theodore. So he's going to be getting a pay increase, but I assume he will be sticking around. But you know what? It really depends on, how they retool, because all it takes is, like, I know, you can only assume people will do things the way we see a lot of teams do it, which is they get good, sometimes they win, sometimes they don't, then they start to kind of peter off, and then they end up rebuilding, and then they build it back up. And, so that's what everyone assumes will always happen. But we've seen plenty of times before, and it's more specific scenarios, but we see teams all the time that, they look like they're on the downswing, and then, damn, that's a really good draft pick in the second round. There's another really good one. Oh, this was a banger trade. All of a sudden, it's like retool over, and they're back in it. Like, and personally, I think that's like low key might be what's happening right now in St. Louis. I think they've made a couple real sneaky good moves, and I think they're going to be ready to contend again a lot sooner than people thought.
It's also kind of like what the Rangers went through. Like, obviously, the Rangers got that extra kind of bump because, like, they didn't really make the playoffs, but, like, they kind of did with, like, the bubble. And then they still got the first overall pick, and that really kind of, like, jump-started it a whole lot. Now, you can look at it with, team. Winning the draft lottery there and whatnot. They immediately went out and bought like crazy, and you could argue that maybe it didn't help them to the lengths that if they kind of just continued on kind of building through the draft and their prospects. But it's very similar to where
they also
kind
won the President's Trophy, so it's hard to argue too much with it. Another team that kind of did that, which is a bit weird almost, is Nashville, because Nashville, they just bought the hell out of July 1st this year, and a little bit last year as well, and all of a sudden, like, a team that looked destined for a rebuild, they're back, and most people have them making the playoffs next year, no question. So, like,
I'd like to have a chat with people who don't have Nashville making the playoffs next year. Well,
especially since they made the playoffs last year, and all they did was buy. So it really depends on how the GM looks at it, and does he want to go through the rebuild, or does he say, fuck it, we ball, and just absolutely go all out to keep it going? And sometimes you can just turn it around if you get a couple good pieces, but we'll see if Vegas can do that going forward here. One thing about Vegas is they do not have, almost notoriously so, they do not have a ton of players that play all 82 games for them. They only have 3 guys who played 82 games for them last year, and that is Jonathan Marchessault, who is now with Nashville, Ivan Barbashev, and Braden McNabb. Is Barbashev still with the team?
I think. He's locked in there for quite a bit. Aside from Hurdle, Barbashev's got the longest deal on their team out of any forwards.
4 years left. And the rest of them, they had less, a couple guys one guy was 79, 76, but there's a lot of guys in that 56, 55, 40 some. And like Mark's, and they're big names too, Eichel, 63 games. Mark Stone, 56. Alec Martinez, 55. Shea Theodore, 47. Those are guys that are really important to their success, and all playing between 60 and 40 games. It's not great for them, but hopefully some of those guys can get more healthy. Jack Eichel in particular, I think, will be more healthy this year. And I think he's gonna produce a lot better. He was just over a point per game last year at 68 in 63 games, and I think we're gonna see him jump back up. He's gonna have a 95, 100 point season this year.
Who's that? Sorry,
Jack Eichel.
I don't know, because I don't know. I think Jack Eichel, I mean, he can't stay healthy, right? And that's kind of the thing around him right now. obviously we know kind of the situation with Buffalo, so can't use that as a part of the argument because, he got the surgery when he came to Vegas and whatnot. But like, after the surgery, he did play 34 games when he came back. But then like the following year, he only played 67. And then last year, he only played 63.
Yeah.
So, and even in that, in those years, 67 games played, only 66 points, 63 games played, 68 points. Now, the playoffs, he goes to another level. He's one of those guys that turns it up in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But, like I've seen people out there, they're saying Jack Eichel, top 10 center in the NHL. Absolutely not. Like, and I think that I don't even think you can make an argument at this point now for him being a top 10 center in the league. Like, I think Jack Eichel, if he plays a full 82 games, and especially with, where this Vegas team is at now, 85 points to 90. Like, if he does play the full 82. Because I think like that roster is pretty depleted now. And so he's not going to have, guys like Marchessault to play with, or I don't think he plays with Stone. I think they're rolling Stone and Hurdle together. A couple of big boys up front.
It's kind of hard to tell, right? Because sometimes, good players like Marchessault leave and there's a dip in production, but other times that guy leaves and all of a sudden the guys who are near him get better because they have more opportunity, right? Guys like Brent Burns leaves San Jose and all of a sudden Erik Karlsson gets to be the guy and he puts up 100 points. And it's happened both ways so many times it's impossible to really predict.
Okay, one thing first of all, I love that Erik Karlsson put up 100 points. There is not a player on Vegas's forward core that can even sniff Erik Karlsson's jockstrap. Like, you're talking about guys like Amadio's gone, Paul Cotter's gone, like Pavel Dorofeyev. Like, that's a guy who's probably getting a bump or at least a look at the top six, and like I don't think that's a guy you want in your top six. Did Vegas add? What did they add this offseason?
Like,
I feel like they must have added at least something, right? Or did they just straight up lose guys?
They might have had Nicholas Waugh last year, but I'm not sure.
Oh, no, yeah. They've had him for time. Oh, okay, so they did bring in Victor Olofsson.
They brought in Victor Olofsson, and they brought in Alexander Holtz.
Holtz, I think Holtz and Olofsson get a look.
Hardly it.
Okay, actually, I'm glad we did look here. I just want to double check.
Putting Holtz with Mark Stone might be their best bet.
No, their best bet is going with Victor Olofsson with Jack Eichel, because they played a bit together in Buffalo, and that's when Olofsson was having some of his. I mean, that was right when Olofsson kind of came into the league, but I thought he looked at his best when he was playing with like, maybe not his best season, but he looked at his best when he got stints with Eichel. So like, if I'm Vegas, I'm probably throwing those two together and trying to see if maybe that can spark something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a big thing like Vegas, it comes back to, can they stay healthy? That's really what it comes back to.
It really does. And they've had trouble staying healthy, some more in the regular season than the playoffs, but playoffs are also where it counts, right? So we'll get to the lineups here. They do not have a number for Victor Olofsson. I guess he hasn't announced what number he's going to be there. But for the daily face-off starting lineup for the Vegas Golden Knights, they have first line of Ivan Barbashev on the left wing, Jack Eichel in the center, and Victor Olofsson on the right wing. That's probably what I would have said should be their first line.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Barbashev.
Barbashev. Eichel Olofsson. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the way you have to go with it. Like, and again, like the thing is with Vegas is they kind of have that luxury of like they have so many centers, right?
Yeah.
And Barbashev kind of makes the most sense to go to the wing. Like I think you have to keep Eichel at center. Hurdle, you 100% have to. Like before the episode, we were talking about his face-off numbers, and if you've got a big guy like that, I think he's like what 6'3", 215 or something like that. You want that as a centerman. And then William Karlsson, obviously, like that's your kind of your three centers. So, Barbashev goes to the wing and playing with Eichel. Maybe Barbashev takes the faceoffs. So I'm pretty sure Barbashev's pretty decent in the dot.
His stats would say otherwise, but they're not many stats either. Despite playing all 82 games last year, he only took looks like 87 faceoffs last year, and he was a 42.5%.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. Yeah, he's not touching the dot unless he has to.
That's in less than 100 faceoffs. So on cap wages, they also have him listed only as a left wing, but on Hockey Reference, he's a center. So I think he's naturally a center, but he must have been playing with somebody else.
He's moved to a winger now with Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah. He was
probably, and again, it's just because of their plethora of centermen. Like, yeah, and that's a thing, right? It's like, Stevenson goes out the door, which is also another big loss for them. We really haven't dove into that yet. Yeah, but you bring in Hurdle. Face-off guy for them. You bring in Hurdle to replace that. So, and I think Hurdle definitely is a step up from Stevenson. I think both offensively and defensively. Like, I think not like miles ahead better, but I think Hurdle is definitely an improvement, especially when you look at the deal like Stevenson got. It's like you could pay Hurdle for that. Like,
yeah,
I think you're totally fine with that. So, you lose Stevenson, but really, like, you didn't get much of Hurdle last year. You got him for a couple of games at the end of the regular season. Yeah, and then he was abysmal in the playoffs. But again, he was coming off that injury. And that's another thing, though, is, like, I'm a massive Hurdle fan. Like, love the guy. But again, Vegas goes out and trades for him, and he's not the most, like, reliable guy when it comes to staying healthy, especially with those knee injuries, which is what he was missing time for last year. So you got to wonder maybe how many games you get out of Hurdle as well now.
Yeah, teams got to be careful doing that. Otherwise you end up acquiring a guy like Ryan Ellis and you give up a ton of stuff for him, and he plays, what has he played, like 4 games for the Flyers since they traded for him? Like, they traded for a guy that they knew had injury history, and one more injury is all it takes, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do here, but if they can stay healthy, I think this is still a solid team at the least.
Go with that first line. I don't mind it. Like, again, kind of really have to see what Olofsson does. That's the big question mark. Like, I think Barbashev and Eichel is fine, but Olofsson's kind of the, it could hit. He could drop 30 goals, 30 assists. I think that's kind of his cap. I think maybe you're lucky if you get 30 goals, 35 assists, but that remains to be seen. We'll kind of just have to wait and see how that works. But I'm optimistic of having him up there, reunited with Eichel.
Yeah, and Barbashev's one of those guys that, like, he's good. He can fit on that top line, but, like, we've said it a couple times throughout these reviews that he can definitely work on that top line, but he's not that elite guy. In an ideal world, he's on the second line. Yeah. He's one of the best top 6 forwards in the league, but I wouldn't quite call him elite.
You could get away with him on the top line, but if you have him on your second line, like, that's a really, really good guy to have on the second line.
Now you're starting to describe a legit championship contender that for a team that has enough depth that you can put him on the second.
He's also one of the better, I would say, two-way forwards, like, on the left wing. He's not number one, in my opinion. He's definitely not number one, but, like, he's up there.
Yeah. Their second line is not too bad either. On left wing, they have Pavel Dorofeyev, centered by Tomas Hertl, and right wing Mark Stone.
So this is basically like what we talked about with Montreal's second line. It could be a really good second line.
Yeah. actually.
But how many games are they all going to play together? And again, Dorofeev, I'm not high on. Like I agree with you. I'd kind of almost rather see Holtz.
Yeah.
Maybe get a crack up there first, but I think if you're playing with Hurdle and Stone, you can make Dorofeev, maybe
Yeah.
a 20 goal guy and 20 assists. Like,
Has Hurdle played on the left wing before? Because that's what they have him listed as center
he
/ left wing on cap wages.
he only really did when he like first came into the league. Like he
Right.
started out on the wing with Joe Thornton, and then then he kind of moved into playing on the wing with Couture. But then kind of once Thornton was gone, then it was like then Hurdle kind of became a solidified center. Like I think the plan was
Yeah.
always for him to play center, but is really just get in the NHL, just play on the wing, kind of get your reps and work on your game all around. And then when you do play center, like you're just going to naturally, like you're not going to have anything to work on. You're going to be ready to go right out of the gate once we get you there.
Right. I almost wonder if it would be better for them to, even if you have Hurdle take the faceoffs and then just play left wing, and then you put William Karlsson as their center on that second line.
I think you would do Karlsson on the wing.
Yeah,
and
I'm not super familiar with Karlsson's game. I just see that he's listed only as a center, so I don't know if he like can't play wing or hasn't. But
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it's way easier to transition from being a centerman to a winger than it is from switching to like from a winger to a centerman. So, and if I was just picking, I would just go with like again. I don't know super deep on Karlsson's defensive game fully. I naturally don't watch a lot of Vegas's games, but I always would rather take kind of the more bigger power forward centerman as opposed to the smaller guy, just because you kind of want that big guy down low and in front of your own net, clearing guys out.
Yeah. Honestly, looking at their stats more and more, I almost think they need to have their 1-2 centers be Hurdle Karlsson. Or at the very least for the faceoffs, even if they don't play it necessarily, like have Karlsson take the faceoffs on that first line and then play left wing. Because some of their other centermen, like Jack Eichel, he's a 45% in the dot. It's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Barbashev,
No, it's not.
42.5%. Like, it's not great, but William Karlsson in like over 1,000 faceoffs last year, 56%. And then Hurdle, who admittedly was only in 6 games, but looks like he took around 80 faceoffs. He was a 69.5% in those 60, or closer to 80 faceoffs. So it looks like those guys are really good on the dot. So you might want to have them taking more of them.
Well, you've given me more ammo to push the narrative on Jack Eichel now that we know he sucks at faceoffs. But with Vegas again, I don't think you can, just because again, like you've lost 2 massive guys on your roster in Marchessault and Stevenson, and so you don't really have the luxury of being able to like stack your top 2 lines. Like you kind of need to space it out, because if you move Karlsson off that third line, you move him up, then like what's your third line then? Like your depth is really starting to hurt.
Yeah.
And you don't have the luxury of being like, oh, we'll play our top 2 lines and we'll just overload them, because over half your top 6 then is very injury prone. and then you're really going to be in trouble there.
Yeah.
They just don't have the luxury of loading up the top 6. Like it'd be fun, but
it's just Will Karlsson was their third point scorer and their third goal scorer last year. 30 goals, 30 assists, 60 points in 70 games. I don't know if they can afford to play him third line minutes. Like Karlsson should not be playing the same amount of minutes for you as Brendan Bisson and Alexander Holtz.
No, but Karlsson, you know he's going to be getting power play and penalty kill time.
Yeah, I guess he must.
Like he's going to be in all situations.
He's got it. Yeah. And obviously, like I just said, their third line, Brendan Bisson on the left wing, William Karlsson centered, and Alexander Holtz on the right wing. it's not a terrible third line.
Again, it's still the big question mark because we don't really know much about Brendan Brisson at the NHL level. William Karlsson, like that's probably one of the best third line centers in the league, no doubt. And then Alexander Holtz, like again, we kind of talked about him beforehand. The skill is there. It's really just can he put the pieces together to be a consistent player on a consistent basis. And if he can, I think playing with a guy like William Karlsson can be great for him. But like again, he's got to put the pieces together now because the tools are there. He has to find a way to make it work, especially now that he's being given an opportunity on a new team like we talked about previously. San Jose didn't want him in the Timo Meier deal, and then the Jacob Markstrom deal. Calgary didn't want him, and even in the Toffoli deal, Calgary didn't want him. So, two rebuilding teams didn't want a young former 6 overall pick. So, there's areas to be concerned about, but with Vegas, I mean, you never know. They've turned lots of guys from. Well, look at Chandler Stevenson.
Is it
like they can turn guys into them.
Yeah, and last year with the Devils, something nice to look at. 82 games played with the Devils last year for Alexander Holtz.
That's why they wanted him.
They don't have a ton of guys who do that. In those games, 16 goals, 28 points. Like he could put up numbers. He's just got.
Like I said, that's a lot of fourth line minutes he was playing too. Yeah. It wasn't even third line.
Like I'm trying to
no power play time, I don't think.
I'm trying to find here what his time on ice was per game last year because playing down in the lineup, that's really good numbers. But there's always a reason guys aren't playing up in the lineup when that's the case. Yeah, he played 11 and a half minutes of ice time per game last season.
Yeah, so he really wasn't playing a whole lot.
He had 1 power play goal and 1 power play assist on the season. So I don't know if that was literally a stretch of like a week where he got on the power play or he just didn't do much on the second power play unit, but he only got 2 points from it.
One with New Jersey, we know they weren't the healthiest team, so
no, they were
probably
not.
When some guys went down, he was getting some looks here and there.
Yeah, but a guy who puts up decent numbers like that, you'd think he'd start getting a couple more minutes. But if he's not, like you just gotta wonder why. Like it doesn't look like he's struggling, but it remains to be seen. Who knows? Like I could definitely see a world where by the end of this season he's playing in their top 6. Like honestly, I could see him on the top line by season's end.
Yep.
Victor Olofsson is not a guy who is staple to line 1, So like even Barbashev, like if he proves himself and especially if he looks good in a few tryout games with Eichel, all bets are off.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where I'm kind of like with the third line. Like, and again, Brisson, he's a former first round pick. It's taken him quite a bit to get here to be a full-time NHL guy.
Is he a Vegas don't know a whole first lot. Rounder?
Yeah, he's surprisingly like the one guy that they've held on to.
I was going to say, because they don't hold on to many of their firsts.
I just want to double check. I believe his... Okay, never mind.
Dang.
But his dad is Pat Brisson. And I just wanted to look up to make sure. So he's an agent, and he's an agent for players. And some of the notable names on his roster: Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, Anze Kopitar, and Jonathan Taves.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've heard the name Pat Brisson. I mean, those are all the biggest names from 2010 to 2015. Dude's
made bank off those guys.
Like, arguably the 3 best players from that timeline.
Yeah. So, and the thing with Brendan Brisson, right? Again, he's listed as a centerman. He's not going to get that crack with Vegas. He was drafted in 2020. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years after he was drafted. Last year in the AHL, he played 52 games, 19 goals, 19 assists, 38 points. You probably want a bit more from a guy you drafted in the first round, but he did get 15 NHL games last year, and he did put up 8 points in 15 games. So
yeah, that's not bad.
Not great AHL numbers, but in limited, time in the NHL, he did put up some decent numbers for getting his first crack. So it's a boom or bust third line. It could be a really, really good, solid third line that could work, or it could blow up on them and they have to move some guys around or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, there's lots of optimism
goes.
when looking at this lineup. Like, it could go very good. It could go very bad.
Yeah. And that fourth line they got Brett Howden on the left wing, Nicholas Waugh on center, and Keegan Colasar on the right wing.
I like that fourth line actually a lot.
Yeah, it's a fourth line. Like, Brett Howden could probably play on third line in some teams. But
no, Nicholas Waugh would be the guy to move up out of any of them.
Yeah.
But again, he's a centerman. So he's kind of just, it's kind of that thing. It's like a Casey Cizikas with the Islanders, right? He'd be a great third line center on a lot of teams, but there's so many centers where he kind of just has to go to that fourth line center role. But again, like, if you've got Nicholas Waugh as your fourth line center, I mean, it helps that he's got two really solid fourth line wingers with him, but you could pretty much slot anyone in there and you'd be okay, because that's, again, probably a top 5 fourth line center in the league.
Yeah.
I don't like saying it because it's Vegas, but like, it's true. It's a very, very solid fourth line, especially in the middle. Like, their center top to bottom is really nice.
It's hard to judge this team because they've got guys like Dorofeyev and Brisson on the second and third line that we don't really know what we're going to get, and we hardly even know what we're going to get from Victor Olofsson in a first line role up there with Eichel. So it's very hard to judge this team, but since coming to the league, they've found a way every year except for one. So we'll see what that forward core can do for them, but for my money, where this team really shines is on the blue line, and they still have a very good defensive core. This first defensive pairing, they have Noah Hannafin and Alex Pietrangelo. That's solid.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's very good there.
There's a couple first defensive pairs that might be better around the league, but arguably their best defenseman isn't even on in that top 2 there. So it's hard to say, because on that second pairing they got Braden McNabb and Shea Theodore. That top 4 is unreal. That is really good.
Yeah, their defense is, yeah, like that's a very solid top 4. And again, we really kind of talked about it a lot when we're talking about like Buffalo's top 4 and how strong that was. And it was like really the only team we could talk about that is right up there is Vegas. And again, like, yeah, especially with how good Hannafin looked. He looked great last year coming over to Vegas.
Yeah, 12 points in 19 games, a +6 since being acquired by Vegas. They really have a solid blue line, and even that third pairing of Nick Hague and Zach Whitecloud, like, that's a great third pair. Like,
again, top 4, like, just looking at top 4 defensemen, I'm still going Boston, but top 6, I'm taking Vegas over any team in the league.
Yeah,
like, that's a gross third pair.
They don't have that one guy that's a fringe NHLer or a young guy that's just being called up trying to cut his teeth. Like, these are all proven guys that are so solid. They don't have that weak point that other teams' top guys can target and be like, take it in on that side and see if you can make him make a mistake. Like,
right.
They don't have any holes in this boat. Like, I really don't have a ton to say about this decor other than just how good it is. Like, Petrangelo's starting to get up there in age. I believe he is 33, I want to say.
34.
34. So he's starting to get pretty old. Braden McNabb's 33. They don't have Alec Martinez anymore.
Which I will say it is a big loss. Again, it's kind of like the Chandler Stevenson thing, right? When you look at it on paper, it's like, yeah, that's a big loss. But at the same time, like when you have guys like Zach Whitecloud, Nicholas Hague right there, who are getting right into their prime of their career, they can fill that role. They might not be at the level of Martinez yet, but give them potentially half a season, and they could be up there, right? So again, it's a big loss, but they had the pieces there to cover up that hole pretty quickly here.
Like and you know what? They aren't quite on his level yet, but I will say they bring different stuff to the table. It's actually sorting their team by points is very easy to compare them because they are 16, 17, 18 in points, so they're all stats right beside each other. Martinez played 55 games for them last year, Whitecloud 61, Hague 73. Martinez had a handful more points than both of them. But one thing that does jump out is Martinez in his 55 games as a defenseman last year, 29 hits. He was like half a hit a game as a defenseman, which you don't see very often. And to be fair, he's 36 years old. Like, hey, I get it, man. But Zach Whitecloud, 100 more hits, 129. And Nick Hague, even more than that with 153. So you're getting a lot more physicality, but Martinez was obviously able to help the puck find the back of the net a lot more. He also had 50 more blocked shots than either of them. So he plays a very different game from both of them, clearly. But
worth noting, Zach Whitecloud, he's right-handed, so he'll play on the right side. He's 6'2", 218 pounds. So again, he can play on the right side. He's a big, solid boy. And then you got Nicholas Hague, left-handed, so he can easily play on the left side. 6'6", 240. So you've got like two big dogs down there on your third pair that can throw the body and they're just big. Like they've got long reaches. Like it's
being big really helps
top
as a
to
defenseman.
bottom.
Like, unless you've got skating like Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar, you're going to want to be a big old boy on that blue line, and you can't teach that.
Exactly. Yeah, I like their defense a lot. Their forwards, again, there's lots of areas that can be of concern, potentially not, depending on how some guys fit in and adjust to the NHL. But their defense, like, they don't got to worry about that. They just got to worry about everyone staying healthy.
Exactly. And in the net, they have Aiden Hill is slated to be their starter, and Ilya Samsonov is slated to be their backup. I really don't mind this. Aiden Hill is, I would say, proven himself at this point pretty solidly as a starter for Vegas.
I'm still up in the air on that. I think Aiden Hill is good, but I think this year is going to be like his big test because I mean last year is the most games he played in a season at 35. Like he's always been injured or in a tandem. Like now, he has put up solid numbers, but again, like I need to see Aiden Hill go out and play 50 to 55 games, and be a full-time starter, have a healthy season. You know, because I don't think, like, if you're Vegas, I think you want Hill to be your starter and have Samsonov just be your backup. Like, I don't think you want to roll that as a tandem.
Yeah.
And so again, I like Aiden Hill. Yeah, I don't like him as a starter, but as a backup, I'm okay with him. But with Hill, I mean, again, like we know the skill is there. It's just now, can he do it over a full season span? Can he stay healthy over a full season span? Like that's, you know, I think you're confident if you got Aiden Hill in the net. It's just, I want to see it for a full year. Net?
Yeah,
exactly right. But like when he's on, he's on. Like when he's playing and healthy, we know what he can do.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, both these goaltenders are UFAs at the end of the year. Same with Robin Lehner, who is also on their payroll as a goaltender, but he is on long-term injury reserve. Probably not going to play this year. Probably never going to play in the NHL again, if we're being honest. But
yeah,
hopefully
I don't
he can
think
recover if he wants to. But all three of those goalies come off the books next year, so they're gonna want to extend probably Aiden Hill at some point this season, or figure out what they're gonna do with their net from there, because they did also pick up Akira Schmid.
I was just about to say, yeah, they got
the New
Schmid
Jersey
from
Devils.
And so that's a solid third goalie. You know, he'll probably just get lots of starting time in the AHL. But if there's an injury, which with Vegas, there very well could be, and you can call him up, and he can be a starter if need be. He can just be your backup. Like, you can be confident knowing you've got a goalie down in the minors that can come up and give you good games if need be.
Yeah, at the very least, it's a guy coming up and he's got some NHL experience. So,
yeah,
you know, it's a decent setup. It's definitely not the juggernaut that they were a couple of years ago. It's very hard to place this team. It really is. They've lost some key pieces. They brought in some new guys. Some of the guys have gotten better. They're one of the more difficult teams in the league for me to place right now.
Yeah.
But I guess we're at the point where I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the hot seat. The Vegas Golden Knights, Brundy, are they a playoff team this year?
Is Vegas a playoff team?
Is Vegas a playoff team?
Now, we know I don't like Vegas, but when you look at this team top to bottom, I mean, you have no choice but to say they are not a playoff team. I do not think the only way I see Vegas making the playoffs, right, is having like your basically everybody stay healthy, from your top end forwards to your top end defenseman to your starting goalie. And I don't know if they can. You know, they're not going to have the luxury of adding pieces at the deadline because, again, your cupboards are pretty dry. You're not going to be able to get away with, you know, guys going on LTIR so you can bring in more pieces because, like, you really can't afford to have any of your guys sitting on LTIR. And again, I think there's three teams in the Pacific that I think are better than Vegas, and I think there's teams in the Central that are going to take the wild card spots. So I'm going Vegas does not make the playoffs. They just barely miss out. Like, they're going to be right in the hunt till the end, but I see them coming up just short this year.
Yeah, and I figured you'd say that. You've been to be fair, you have been saying it throughout the off season. That, you know, we've talked plenty about who we think will make it, who might not. This is a really tough one. I think I know who the three in the divisional spots in the Central are going to be. I think the Central at least gets one, if not both, wild card spots in the West. I also think that the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers have to be in divisional spots in the Pacific. Do the Kings or the Golden Knights get in? I really don't know. They were 1 point apart last year. And the team that was on the bottom had more wins, but the other team had 3 more overtime losses. So it almost feels like a coin flip. And I'm trying to use my knowledge from us talking about the LA Kings recently to make the call, but I'm going to say the Vegas Golden Knights are a playoff team. That D-core is it just looks too good on paper for me to assume they're going to miss the playoffs.
And that's very fair.
Like, they could easily finish second in the Pacific, or they could be out of the playoffs. Like, I could see a wide variety of outcomes for this team. But a lot of it does depend on if they can stay healthy or not.
Yeah, and that's the biggest, right? And if, you know what, if, again, you probably have to be missing some other pieces here and there. But if they had March or so, they probably are. But I think losing Marchessault and not bringing in anything to fill that, I think really hurts. Right? Like, again, I think you've kind of been able to cover up the Chandler Stevenson loss, the Alec Martinez loss, but the biggest one of them all, the Marchessault one, you really haven't. And I like the additions of Olofsson and Holtz, but like they're not going to put up the numbers Marchessault did. And not only that,
Marchessault put
the
up
energy
11
Marchessault
more
brought.
goals. He put up 11 more goals than the guy on the team with the second most goals. Like, that's really, like, any guy in your like top 5 for production is hard to replace. The top guy in points and goals, that's massive.
Your Conn Smythe winner. It still blows my mind that they let him walk.
Yeah, especially since he didn't, at least when Stamkos walked, he went somewhere and got paid $8 million a year, Isn't, like, what's Marchessault making?
I think he's getting like 5.5 for 5 years.
Yeah, like that's... I can't think of a team in the league that couldn't find room for a guy that good.
And I'm honestly more shocked of Vegas letting Marchessault go than Tampa Bay letting Stamkos go. Because, I mean, at least with Tampa, you brought in Jake Gensel, and I really like Stamkos. But at this point in time, I think Jake Gensel's the better player at this point now. Like, obviously, not a couple years ago, but like at this point now. And he fits in Tampa's timeline better. Vegas, you let Marchessault go, you did nothing to address it. And I think that's going to really hurt him in both off the ice and on the ice. Because, again, we know the kind of the leadership and the energy he brought to that team every night.
Like, just a team that is in win now mode for the next couple of years before it looks like the wheels are really going to fall off. It's crazy to give up a guy that just won a Conn Smythe like 500 days ago. Like, that's...
Yeah, right.
How are you supposed to get better losing a guy of that caliber? That's like the most important thing.
It's still just crazy to me how, Fleury wins a Vezina for him. They trade him for future considerations. And then Marchessault obviously wins the Conn Smythe for them and whatnot. It's a big part of why they won the cup. And a year later, they're letting them walk. Like, it's a business, but like it's tough trying to see. I mean, the Fleury one kind of makes sense because he was making a lot of money, but it was like, I mean, the Marchessault one, yeah.
5.5. Are you kidding? You couldn't find that? I bet he would have taken 5 even to stay.
Yeah.
Like he on Maine wanted to stay in Vegas, so it's that one has been puzzling to me all summer. But regardless, you do not have them as a playoff team. I do. Both of us are very unsure, but we'll see how that goes out. But Brundi, we also have something we do on these recaps for each team. We also each try and predict a single player to win an individual award this year, or who is the most likely on their team to win an award. So I will let you go first. Who on the Vegas Golden Knights do you have?
For me. Like, again, looking at this team, there's really not many, like, realistically, that you can go with. So for me, again, we've been pumping up their defense for the last bit. I'm going to stick with it. I think the most likely outcome for a player to win an individual award is going to be Shea Theodore winning the Norris Trophy.
I really like that pick. I thought you were going to try and rock the boat a little bit and say Noah Hannafin for Norris.
No, I mean, you look at Shea Theodore, like, obviously didn't have the healthiest year last year, only playing 47 games, but he did have 42 points.
42
like he was up there being close to a point per game. If he can have a full healthy season, back it up with some good defensive numbers, like I could see him getting his name up there in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see it, and I do think there's a couple of decent options here. Shea Theodore for Norris. Alex Pietrangelo is getting a bit old to throw in that conversation.
Don't say it. Don't say it. It's never gonna happen again.
Probably not.
Don't even say it.
I think it's the most likely for their team. I think it's most likely for their team.
If you say it, I swear.
Oh, I'm so convinced already we're talking about the same thing.
I hope we're not.
We totally are. I am going with Mark Stone for the Selke
it's
trophy.
not happening. I promise you, it's not happening again. It's not happening. It's just not. Like, again, I do think Mark Stone is a fantastic defensive player, but again, he's probably got to play at least 70 games. And again, you still have to put up good offensive numbers.
Yep.
But again, I think Barkov's clogging the lane there. I think Anze Kopitar is still there. I think Matt Boldy, he's going to be a guy in the conversation for years to come.
I think he's going to be hard pressed to. Eriksson X kind of cornered the Minnesota market on Selke talk. I'm not confident.
Some time. Boldy's gonna overtake Eriksson Ek.
Yeah, I definitely
give it like maybe by the end of next season.
Yeah, I was gonna say 1 to 2 years. People will know who Boldy is more.
And again, it's not to say like Stone's bad defensively. It's just
I was gonna say I think he's just the most likely, and for the exact reasons you didn't say Stone, in that how is he gonna win it over Barkov, over Kopitar, etc. I mean, Shea Theodore would have to have a better season than the Cale Makars, the Quinn Hughes, Noah Dobson, Victor Hedman. So
which I think he could. Okay, I think he could. I mean,
he could.
He could. I would still even go. And again, it's weird because I've kind of clowned on him a bit, but like even like Jack Eichel for Hart, I think at this point is more likely.
Honestly, that was I almost said that. I almost said Jack Eichel for Hart,
which I could have gotten on board with that. I could have been on board with that one.
But
what about Marchessault for like Rocket Richard on Vegas? I mean, he dropped 42 goals. They must have re-signed him. Like their heart and soul guy. Of course, he's on the team this year, right? No,
of course. But I'm gonna stick with Mark Stone for the Selke. Not very
I like the
likely,
boldness. I respect it, though. I respect the boldness.
Yeah. Hey, if Hurdle or Eichel were a little more defensively inclined, I might have said one of them. But Vegas has always been a team. Vegas has always been a team that wins by committee. So despite them being very good, it's kind of always been hard to predict an individual award. But
has anyone won anything other than Fleury, Vezina? Like not counting the Conn Smythe, obviously.
I don't think so. And honestly, you know what? A lot of the times we don't, unless it's like, spoiler alert, I bet we're both going to pick Connor McDavid for Edmonton. Unless it's something obviously like Connor McDavid, we're usually picking separate guys, so I didn't want to go Shea Theodore, but that probably is the most likely. Like you said,
could have hopped on the boat.
He was just under a point per game last year.
You could have hopped on the pirate ship and you took your little dinghy out there and.
Hey, don't talk about my little dinghy.
Best of luck. Best of luck to you out there, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Maybe Ilya Samsonov will leave Toronto and go win the Hart Trophy in Vegas. Who knows?
Speaking of dinghies, though, moving on east to the Florida Panthers, our 2024 Stanley Cup champions. What do we think about them? How you feeling about that?
I didn't like the way you said it.
It's not fun. It's not fun.
I wish we had face cam on right now. You got a physical reaction out of me a little bit, but
with what part?
The way you said that they're the Stanley Cup, the 2024 Stanley Cup champions.
Hey, I'm not happy about it either. I just you got to give credit where credit's due, especially because as a fan of a team that is always losing and doesn't have a cup, I hope when San Jose wins a cup someday, I hope even the haters of them still give them their flowers and the respect they deserve. Because like at the end of the day, we do got to give Florida credit. I think there is something to be said about a team that goes to the Stanley Cup Finals and just gets beat to shit, like from top to bottom. That team was just it was like a morgue at that point. And to come back the following year and rewrite the story, and I mean they put a little bit of scare in themselves there in the Cup final. But to come all the way back and win it, I think there does need to be something said that that is very impressive by them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like this team, I'm not a fan, but yeah, they're a good ass hockey team. And specifically, they're built for the playoffs, which is
Yeah.
always scary when teams are built that way. And one huge thing with this team is their top guys play a lot of games. This is damn near the opposite of the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, I just had the Golden Knights stats, team stats from last season up. Now I have the Panthers. This list is like half as long. Like, they only had 30 different players play for them last year in any games. That includes Tobias Bjornfoot, who played one game for them last year. Like, they literally had 30 people play for them last year in NHL games. Like, they didn't have to fill any holes. They did not have many injuries, and the ones they didn't last long enough that they had to try out a bunch of guys and bring in new dudes. Like, they have their guys, and they've been able to keep them healthy, and they performed incredibly. So if those guys can all stay healthy in a similar way, then I think they're gonna run it back and be a very successful team again this year. Maybe not win the cup again, but I don't see a reason that they shouldn't at least be a top 5 favorite.
I'm right there with you. So I'll quickly go through their stats from last season, and I'm going to dive into the players they lost because there's a lot of them that they lost. So I'm curious to see how their lines may look, given that a lot of guys that were regulars in their lineup last year are no longer with them. But the Florida Panthers last year, 52 wins, 24 regulation losses, 6 overtime shootout losses, 110 points. That was first in the Atlantic Division. 268 goals for. That was good for 11th in the league. 200 goals against. That was good for second. I believe Boston was the only. I think Boston. Or was it the Jets?
It's the Jets.
Was the Jets
less? The Jets had 199 goals against, one less.
Oh, yeah, so on. So again, that's kind of the story with the Florida Panthers. Very, very good defensively. But again, now like this is the thing, right? The part of the reason that made Florida was so good is obviously, their top guys up front, but like their depth was solid. Like it wasn't this like elite third line, elite fourth line, but the pieces they had worked because it was just solid and guys played their role. So just going through Brandon Montour, that's a big loss on their defense. Going to Seattle, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think really kind of rejuvenated his career by signing that 1-year deal to go to Florida. Obviously does get a Stanley Cup out of it, and he got a nice payday by Toronto because of it. Kevin Stenlund, I believe he's just still currently a free agent at the moment. Nick Cousins, we know he's gone off to Ottawa. They're going to be fine without him. Vladimir Tarasenko, he was a great pickup at the trade deadline. He obviously is gone as well now. Josh Mahura has gone to Seattle. Ryan Lomberg has gone back to Calgary. Anthony Stolarz, their backup goalie. Again, I don't think that's going to hurt him because of Spencer Knight coming up. And Kyle Poso, free agent. I don't believe he signed anywhere. So like it's, it hurts losing a big, Ekman-Larsson was bottom pair guy for them realistically. He was good on the power play, but like losing Montour up top on that defense hurts. But like it's just a lot of depth pieces that they lost. I will say it was
a lot of points from the blue line that they lost as well. 33 points from Montour and 32 from Ekman-Larsson. That's that's 65 points that you're losing from your blue line. Like there's probably a decent couple of teams in the league that their entire blue line doesn't get 65 points. So
honestly, yeah. I mean, the big splash Florida made right off the bat was re-signing Sam Reinhart to an 8-year deal at 8.625 AAV. I mean, after what he did this past season, doing what he did. Did he hit 50 goals again? Yeah, he did. Oh, yeah, 57.
Sure did. 57. I was
Not
really
only that,
hoping he was going to cost him
57.
more.
57 goals, and he did have the eventual game-winning goal for the Stanley Cup. So, like, that was huge for them to get him re-signed. I think we were both pretty confident that he was gonna stick around there.
Yeah, it just
so that was huge for them.
Everything pointed to it, and he said he wanted to stay there. I thought they might run into trouble depending on what the money ask was, because I do think Reinhart could have found more money out there, but
yeah,
I
don't
stay with
think
the team.
I don't think a team would have given him 10 on the open market. I really don't. Looking at it now, but I think he could have easily gotten 9.5.
I was gonna say
or maybe like
I think he
9.75.
I think he can find 9.5 pretty easily. 10's pushing it, but I think there might be some teams, especially if there's multiple, because he never went to free agency, so we don't know.
Yeah.
What offers would be there, but if there's multiple teams interested, a little bidding war, I wouldn't have been shocked if it got to 10.
I wouldn't have been shocked either, though. Like, don't get me wrong. I think if I wouldn't, like, if a team gave him a 7-year deal at 10 mil per, even if Florida gave him 10 mil per year for 8 years, I've been like, yeah, I'm not shocked by that, though.
Yeah,
50 so that's a really nice
scores don't come around that often. Again, another guy, all 82 games. Like, the best ability is availability. One guy that you did just mention quickly, Kevin Stenlund signed with the Utah Hockey Club.
So, oh, he did. That's right. Yes, he did. Okay. I was starting to think when I said, I was like, I felt like he did, but I wasn't sure if it was or if he was just in rumors of signing somewhere.
There's been a lot of PTOs this offseason as well. There's almost more than usual, so it's been weird keeping up on what teams have signed guys and what teams are just like bringing guys in to try it out.
Yeah. Another deal they signed that I think is a really, really solid one for them. Dmitry Kulikov re-signing with Florida, 4 years, 1.15 AAV. For what he did last year and what he brought to his team, especially in the playoffs. Like that's a terrific deal. So like that's back-to-back two really solid signings by Florida there. They do bring in a couple of depth pieces in AJ Greer, coming over from Calgary, signing a 2-year deal. They get Thomas Nosek coming over on a 1-year deal. Rasmus Asplund on a 1-year deal. Mackenzie Entwistle. So again, that's just kind of, you're paying guys basically league minimum, or at least under $1 million, and they're going to come in and hopefully replace what they lost in their bottom 6. Another really, really good signing. I don't know how they managed to pull this off. Re-signing, or I guess an extension. Was it an extension, or did he just re-sign Lundell? Let me pull it up here.
I feel like it was an extension.
Okay, no, so he was an RFA, but they re-signed him.
Okay.
I just pulled it up here, but like Anton Lundell, 6 years, $5 million per year.
He's worth that now. He's worth that right now. He is worth $5 million. That is 5.7% of the cap, and he's 22 years old, and they've got him for 6 more years. Like he is going to
how good
defensively
he is. And especially in the playoffs, like 24 games played, 17 points.
17, dude. God, $5 million per year.
And that was third line center.
Costing him huge money.
That was third line center, wasn't it? As well, because it would have been Barkov, Bennett, and then Lundell. Yeah. So like that's solid. And we kind of talked about the defenseman they lost.
Low key, their third line was dynamite last year in Luostarinen and Lundell and Tarasenko once they traded for him. I imagine that that they need to replace that Tarasenko, that kind of third line right wing spot. They kind of need an upgrade there, I would assume, but other than that, like they've still got all the main pieces, and they're looking like they can run it back.
It is worth noting they do not have their first, second, or third round pick in the 2025 draft. They do have their first and second in 2026. So, they still do have stuff to work with if they want to make a move. And in terms of prospects, like really nothing super crazy or special within their system. So, we'll see. We'll see how that goes for them. But again, we kind of talked about some of the defense when they lost. They did bring in guys to potentially fill those voids. They brought in Nate Schmidt on a 1-year deal, Jacob Megna on a 1-year deal, and then Adam Boquist, who I think is still a very young player that's got good potential to maybe fill that Montour role a bit, maybe get some looks on the power play and see if something can spark there. I think he was kind of finding his way a bit in the NHL with Columbus before they let him go. And so, they made it work with, Ekman Larson. His career was kind of floundering after he got bought out by Vancouver. Gustav Forsling was on waivers and they picked him up, and look how it worked out with those guys. They got Montour from Buffalo for a 3rd round pick. Look what he turned into. So if there's a team that can take a young defenseman with lots of potential and turn him into something, it would be Florida. So I'm kind of very, very excited to see Adam Boquist and see the opportunities he's going to get.
So it does make me very nervous that they picked him up here in Florida. They did also bring in Jesper Boqvist, so they do have that brother pairing there.
Okay.
So that's
that's always fun though. I like to see that.
Yeah. Boqvist, who I don't know if he prefers this or if he just does what he can to get in the lineup, but he's listed as a center, right winger, left winger. Jesper Boqvist,
jack of all trades.
So you can plug him in wherever you need to. If you have a scratch or an injury in any game, you can plug him in on the 4th line and move everyone up accordingly. So he might get into some games. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on both of those two. They have a decent amount of guys on this team that have 1 year left. They have a couple of guys. The main ones being Aaron Ekblad has 1 year left. Sam Bennett and Carter Verhaeghe all have 1 year left on their current deals. So they'll have to figure out which guys they're planning on keeping.
It sounds like they're already in talks of trying to figure something out with Verhaeghe. Again, I don't know what that contract would even begin to look like. But it sounds like it's kind of early talks are indicating that, if they have to just pick one of the 3, he's going to be the one they go with. Again, I think they can find a way to keep 2 of them. Keeping all 3, I don't see that happening.
I don't know if you can keep 2 if those 2 are Verhaeghe and Ekblad. I don't think Bennett gets paid near the same as either of those 2.
I don't think Ekblad gets a raise though, from 7.5.
I think he might. He's at least I don't think going down from that.
No, I think it could just be one of those ones where he just re-ups on another 7.5. Maybe if it comes to the point where they're like, hey, we're struggling with money, I could see Ekblad being a guy like, you know what, yeah, I'll take a 7-year deal or something. Because again, if he's taking 7 with Florida, he's going to be making more money than if he goes to a dozen other teams and signs for 8. Right? Because you the no tax. So I could realistically see Ekblad being in that 7 range.
I'm pretty sure that's only taxed on where you play though. So he only gets the no tax for 41 of those games.
Which is still huge though.
It's big, but it's I think people overestimate how much you get off with it. And I don't know. I think he could,
because it's the whole reason that people that nah. I realistically I don't see him getting any more than 7.5 at least though. I don't think he would get an 8 mil.
I think he could definitely get 8 mil, maybe even 8.5 if a team really wants him in free agency. But
no, just because again, the consistency issues, right? Like he played 82 games back-to-back years from 2017 to 2019, but then 67 games played, 35, 61, 71, 51. Like, and I mean, last year, like he did put up good defensive numbers, but only like 18 points in 51 games, 6 points in 24 playoff games. Like, unless he has a monster year, I don't see many teams lining up at the door to hand Ekblad $8 million.
Yeah. I don't know. Did he play on their top defensive pair this year when he was in? Or did he slot back into
for a good majority of it because
Montour
was out for quite a bit to start the year.
Okay.
And that's the thing with this Florida decor is it really until the playoffs they never had their full healthy. But like, what's the upside?
Reach it,
like the upside isn't
a Norris winner if he's back and healthy.
Come on.
Before he got injured,
I
he
like
was my
that
pick
Vlad, but
in 2021, 2022, before he got injured, I thought he was going to win the Norris. He looked so insanely good, and then he went down with that.
But that's 2 years ago.
Leg injury.
I was high on Ekblad that year, but like we're talking now though, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get back up to that level now after all the injuries. Like, and that's it. That's the shitty part is I think we are finally seeing prime Ekblad, and then the injuries just kind of kept dogpiling.
I don't think they're bad enough injuries that he's going to stay down. You know, a lot of guys said Stamkos would never recover, and you know, then he ended up putting up 41 goals, 108 points.
Again, I love Ekblad, but like him and Stamkos are on. They're so different.
But these guys who have that high end skill, they can come back to form, and I don't think he's had any. It's not like a goalie getting a knee injury. Like, I don't think he's had any one injury that will affect him for the rest of his career.
No,
I think if he has a solid offseason to recover, and you know, depending on if he needs it, maybe they manage his minutes for a season or something. I really do think he could be a number one defenseman on a lot of teams. Like, I always felt like Aaron Ekblad was underrated. I think he's really good. And
I think he's still underrated.
And I'm not a Panthers fan, obviously, but
I still definitely think he is underrated. But again, like, you know, unless he comes out and drops minimum 50 points and plays at least 75 games, like there's just going to be, again, like this is kind of a prove it year for him, right? Like this is a year where this year will probably determine how much he makes. Like if he used to sign an extension right now, he doesn't have much leverage.
I think he's one of the guys that both him and the team are going to want to wait to get a deal signed.
But yeah, in terms of those three, like I think Verhaeghe is the clear priority. I mean, I'm sure they would love to keep Bennett, but again, like you did just sign Lundell to that
I was going to say, what does Bennett even make?
6-year deal. Like Sam Bennett's making 4.425. So
what do you think he's going to make on his next contract? Does he get a raise?
If he goes to free agency, I could see him getting like 5.5 to 6.
Is he worth that?
Because again, like I like Bennett, but you got to think like, you know, he does a lot of stuff on the ice, but I don't see him as a line driver. I see him as a great complementary piece that, you know, can create some havoc and crash and bash and get pucks out. But in terms of driving the play, like that's not him. But yeah, if he goes to free agency, because that's a guy you want in the playoffs.
Yeah. He's been there for 4 seasons. Oh my God. Does not feel like it.
Like if he goes to free agency, he's going to be, especially if like Florida goes on at least somewhat of a run again next year and he has a good showing in the playoffs, like teams will be lining up. And if there's a bidding war, like there might be a team that gives him like a 5-year deal at 6.5 or something.
That would be an albatross. That'd be awful.
Like we see it happen all the times with guys that go off in the playoffs and are guys you want in the playoffs that I wouldn't give him that much, but like I could see certain teams lining up for,
like, he's never put up 50 points in a season. He's been over 40 the last 3 seasons now. But so he can't break that 50-point marker. He's been playing with freaking Matthew Tkachuk. Like if I'm playing minutes like he is at 17 minutes of average time on ice for an NHL season, I'm probably getting fucking 15, 20 points playing with Matthew Tkachuk. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I don't
I'm
know.
right there with you. Like
And
the offensive numbers aren't super great. Like, I mean, he did have that 49 points, but again, like he is solid in his own end. He did put up good playoff numbers, and again, I mean, like if Tom Wilson can get 6.5, Sam Bennett could easily get 6.
I think Tom Wilson's a decent bit more skilled. I'm not going to say he's an all-star player. Well, fuck me. I guess he was this year.
Yeah, yeah,
he literally was an all-star player this year. Never mind. But
yeah. Like, but again, long
Sam
story
Bennett,
short, like I think
he seems
Verhaeghe
like
is
one of those guys that is a perfect third-line player, but as soon as he's on your second line, it's like
you got to have the right pieces with him to make it work.
Yeah, but I mean, they just won a cup, right? Like it literally worked. So, and you know what?
Yeah.
Even if he gets 5.5, 6, that's not a massive pay increase. So you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm underrating his impact on the game a little bit, but looking at him, it's very clear. Those three, it's incredibly clear that Verhaeghe is the priority. You would
Verhaeghe's the priority.
You would probably rather Verhaeghe come back over re-signing both of the other two. Like honestly, like Verhaeghe does a lot for them, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and like realistically, if you're Florida and you get Verhaeghe signed, he probably takes a good chunk of what Bennett's making. You want to bring Ekblad back, even if you got to give him a raise. You move out a Rodriguez, a Luosterainen, or a Mikkola. You move out one of those three, boom, you can get Ekblad back.
Yeah,
and then you're fine. And then if Boquist works out, he replaces Mikkola. Like, I realistically do see Verhaeghe and Ekblad sticking around. But yeah, Bennett, I'm having a tough time seeing that where they can get all three of them back, especially if all three are getting raises. But moving on forward, we will move over to Daily Faceoff and take a look at what the projected lines are looking like for the Florida Panthers going into this season. So we don't need to dive in too much with the top two lines. They do stay exactly the same. First line, Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Reinhart on the wings, centered by Alexander Barkov. Like that's a good first line. That's a great first line. That's a Stanley Cup winning first line. Like, we can say that now.
Yeah, like that's one of those lines that has all three guys are solidly elite. You got that like borderline game breaker player for Alexander Barkov. Like that's a very good first line.
Yeah,
and all these guys, Sam Reinhart 28, Barkov 28, Verhaeghe 20. Yeah, literally all three of them are 28 years old. Like they're not aging out anytime soon. Yeah. They got Barkov for 6 years. They got Reinhart for the other 8. If they lock up Verhaeghe, that could be their first line for the next 5-6 years.
Yeah,
in a
at the bare minimum,
though,
yeah.
You know what? That sounds good on paper, but at the same time, you know, Matthew Tkachuk, are you really bringing Matthew Tkachuk to just be a second line guy forever? Like, I know he's probably playing, fine minutes, but
mm-hmm. No, I do get what you're saying though. Like, I do get that, yeah.
It feels like he should be the best player on their team.
Yeah. And Matthew Tkachuk is a line driver, right? He's one of those guys that, like, you put him anywhere, he's gonna elevate those guys around him. Maybe not Sam Bennett as much, but which, looking at their second line, Matthew Tkachuk and Evan Rodriguez on the wing, centered by Sam Bennett. Again, same second line they had last year. It works. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
No, like there's no reason to break it up.
And then the third line, this is where, shakes up a little bit, but not really. You have Ito Luosterainen and Maki Samoskevich on the wing, centered by Baby Barkov, Anton Lundell. Like, you knew you were going to lose Tarasenko.
Yeah.
But I think if your third line still has Luosterainen and Lundell on it, like I think you are just fine.
That's a great third
Like,
line.
you're going to be
they need
totally
to
okay.
upgrade the right wing there,
Yeah,
unless Mackey shows up and is just great. But
and that's the
still,
exciting part about
the other
training
two are
camp,
so
right?
good.
And preseason, like
There's this one
all of
spot that
these
all these guys can work for.
all of these guys are coming in, and that's a glaring hole there. Like, not many young guys or guys on PTOs or depth guys are coming in like I'm going to crack the top 6. Like, no, you're not. Like, you ain't getting in there. But like there's a wide open spot there on the third line. And if you're on that third line with Lundell and Luosterainen, like that could really elevate your career to the next level. So again, I think whoever that goes on that third line is going to be solid, but it would be nice if they can find a guy that can really play up to the level that Lundell and Luosterainen do. And then the fourth line, guy we talked about already, Jesper Boquist. On the left side, Mackenzie Entwistle. On the right side, centered by Thomas Nosek. I don't love Mackenzie Entwistle necessarily there, but again, like I think if you've got Nosek and Jesper Boquist there, like
Nosek's a good pickup.
You're gonna be okay with who you put on the wing there with them.
Yeah, it's a little lacking, but it's also that top 9 is phenomenal. So, and this isn't horrendous, it's just not very good. Mackenzie Entwistle was a fourth line guy on Chicago's team last year. So
yeah, and that's why I'm kind of looking at it like when you've got guys like Jonah Gadjevich and
he couldn't make the third line on the Blackhawks last year. That's the guys in the training camp got to be looking at this daily face-off lineup and licking their lips, saying, "I can make the NHL next year." Because, like no shade to those guys, but like there's spots to be had if anyone really shows up in that training camp for him.
Well, and so worth noting that Samoskevich, he did play mostly in the AHL last year mostly as a 21-year-old. He did put up 54 points in 62 games, 22 goals, 32 assists. Like that is very solid numbers from a young guy in the AHL. So the potential is there for him to maybe make an impact on the third line. And then, for the fourth line, again, I don't see Entwistle there. I think you're either getting AJ Greer in there or Jonah Gadjevich. I think either one of those is an upgrade there. I think you probably go with AJ Greer. Yeah. And then, if you're playing you play Toronto 4 times a year, maybe those are the games Gadjevich goes in, because like if he's in the lineup, there's a 80% chance he's dropping the mitts. So having that guy that, plays maybe 30 games throughout the year, and basically when he does, it's to fight if need be, and if not, it's just playing, regular fourth line minutes and just playing good defensive hockey. So they have options to work with at least.
Like it's honestly, it's one of those teams that, you know what, you need those guys to play 4-5 defensively responsible minutes a night. Maybe go out there and beat the crap out of some people and forecheck hard, and that's it. Like you're going to be leaning on this top 9. And they're all going to be playing relatively similar minutes. I imagine the top 2 lines probably play damn near equal time. And I don't think that third line's too far behind, as long as that one question mark on the right wing holds up. I think, Lundell is pretty good defensively. Luosterainen's not bad. Like, I think that top 9 plays a lot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Moving on to the defensemen, looking a little bit different from last year, but on the top pair, you do have Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad. Forsling, I think, is solid. Great up there. I don't think he's, as the NHL says, I don't think he's the 6th best defenseman in the league. To be quite honest, he's not even
but that's insane.
He's not even top 10. To be honest, like I like Forsling, but come on, he's not top 10. But he is very good. And he's been a great addition.
Yeah, he's been a great addition. I haven't done a full ranking of defensemen in a bit, especially since this last cup has been awarded. But at a quick glance of their top 20 that they had listed, I think like just in my head thinking like just like grabbing him and like looking at the guy below him and being like, is he better than him? No, move him down. Is he better than the next guy? No, move him down. I think I got to around 13 or 14 before I was like, okay, there's a solid argument. I could easily see him here. I think once I got past around Josh Morrissey at like 12 or 13 or something, I was like, now we're at a spot where he could fit in. But
Yeah, and I think
but
that's a fair spot to have him.
yeah, but number 6 is like that. That's crazy. Did they have like Adam Fox at like number 8 or something?
Yeah.
Like,
and again,
he's just on the Rangers.
I'm not
I can't believe they didn't try and push him as number 1. Like,
yeah, like I'm not going to sit and be like, oh, I love Adam Fox. Like I've made it kind of clear, based on how he handled all the situations. But like Adam Fox is better. Adam Fox is a perennial, like a yearly like Norris guy. He's always in the conversation.
Yeah. Hell, people were there, like obviously not very many people, but people were low key talking about like should he get a little bit of heart consideration with some of those later on votes, just because of how much he carried them when he came back from his injury. I think it's hard to give guy heart votes when he misses a bunch of games, but especially when Panarin drops 120 points. But like
exactly right.
He was those two guys in particular were massive for that team last year.
Yeah, but like Forsling and Ekblad, like that's a very solid top pair. Like that's not going to hurt you.
Both guys are elite. Like having two elite defenders there.
I'm a big Ekblad believer. I'd love to see him play a full 82 games and get up to that, on that pace he was at a couple years ago and put up 70 to 75 points like that. That would be absolutely massive for Florida. So I'm really hoping for a big year from Aaron Ekblad. Their second pair got the 777s. You got Dmitry Kulikov and Nico Mikkola. I mean, it's obviously a downgrade.
It's top 4-ish
from last year. Like it's fringe top 4. Like I would like it to be a bit better, but I'm also not going to sit here and be like, oh, this is a big weakness on the team. Like this is hurting them.
It's not a big weakness, but if they had even just that one more like solid top 4 defenseman, they just need that one guy that just is a great defensive presence on that second pair, and now you get to move a Kulikov down, and now you have Mikkola and whoever, and then you have Kulikov on that third pair. Like just one defenseman increases the depth on the blue line a ton.
We touched on him. Like when you look at the third pair, you got Nate Schmidt and Adam Boqvist. And again, I think Boqvist is a guy that going to Florida, I think could really reap the benefits of what they have to offer there for him, especially with the holes that are open now from, a guy like Montour leaving and then Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like those are kind of two of their big guys, especially on the power play and whatnot. So like, I'm not saying like it's a lock Boqvist is going to be in the top 4 and immediately like take off, but like it could happen. And so that could be very nice if, then again, you're looking at your second pair of like Mikkola and Boqvist, and then you've got Kulikov and Nate Schmidt on your third pair. Like that's a really good third pair if that's what you have. So like right now, I'm not going to say this defense is like elite. I think they have an elite top pair, but I think their defense could be insanely good if Boqvist does hit, if he does figure it out with Florida, and he can get into being that, because like again, like he was a top 10 pick. Like the skill is there, and I just don't think he was ever put in the best situations. Like again, he was on a bad Chicago team. He goes to Columbus. He was always behind other guys, and I don't think he necessarily got a fair crack. Like I think this is the chance. I think he's going to get the opportunities, and it's really, again, it's on him. Can he figure it out? It's kind of like Alexander Holtz with Vegas.
Yeah, it really is.
The tools are there. Just figure it out now.
And guys like Boqvist are why a lot of people really have to take a grain of salt every time a new defenseman, this new hot upstart defenseman comes into the league, and they're saying this guy is notoriously said going to be the next Erik Karlsson. Like people were saying that about Boqvist, and God, they were saying it about like 5 or 6 defensemen about in this last year's draft. Like, as soon as a guy's good at moving the puck to the offensive zone, they're like, this guy has the potential to be Erik Karlsson. And
Yeah.
and it's not just Boqvist, but there's been a couple other defensemen in the past 7 or 8 years that have had similar things said, and they don't pan out as much all the time. Obviously, not everyone could be an NHL player, so it's difficult because when you're that type of player, there's not usually room on you on a third line, on a third defensive pairing. It's like Alex Barré-Boulet. That guy is so talented at scoring, but he's not good enough to be a top 6 forward. And he sucks on the fourth line because you need those guys to be good defensively and go hit. So it's just kind of a tough soak. It's hard to get in when you have that top end skill set, but you can't quite play there yet.
Well, and I don't think Adam Boqvist has been dealt the best hand.
No,
we've really kind of seen maybe not now with Chicago, but in that time of 2016 to 2020, they really didn't manage their prospects the best. They really didn't handle it. Adam Boqvist, he was drafted 8th overall in 2018. He was playing over in Sweden. He was one of those few players that made the jump. After drafted, he wanted to get over to North America early, so he did come over and join the London Knights. He put up 60 points in 54 games. The following year, and again, goalies take the longest to develop from their draft year to when they play the NHL. Then defensemen, forwards, it's kind of easier, but defensemen, it's a big jump. When you're playing,
you got to be bigger, stronger.
16,
and
17, 18-year-olds going up to playing against grown men in the best league in the world. And so after his year in the OHL, he played 15 games in the AHL, immediately got called up to the NHL, and he's never played on a good team, right? He played on a bad Chicago team, and then he got traded to a bad Columbus team. But the numbers actually aren't even that bad.
I was gonna say, I just pulled them up. They're actually good. Is it crazy to say these are good numbers?
First year with Chicago, 41 games played, 13 points, only a -3 though. The following year, Chicago, 35 games played, 16 points, only a -7. He goes to Columbus, plays 52 games, 22 points,
11
-11.
goals.
Yeah.
Double-digit goals.
2 years ago, 46 games played with Columbus, 24 points, -12. And then last year with Columbus, 35 games played, 10 points, -8. Now, I don't pay enough attention to Chicago and Columbus, so I don't know, how much of this is injury related. I got to imagine there are some injuries along the way there, but from the numbers there alone,
the 152
on bad
game
teams, he's putting up decent
was
points.
The full season. That was the COVID year, so he did.
Okay.
He did play all the games that season. Just the season was shortened. But
yeah. But when he's playing, he's putting up decent offensive numbers. And again, he's not getting, top pairing time, top power play time. And he's not putting up horrible defensive numbers on bad teams. He was a -8 last year in 35 games with Columbus. You look at Zach Werenski might be tough because he did play 70 games. They don't even have Werenski's plus-minus on here. Trash. Is it that bad? Why are they? It literally just doesn't show it. So I'm wondering how bad. Okay, let's look at Provorov. He played 82 games. Okay, only -11. Maybe Columbus was just sneaky good defensively. Anyways,
terrible defensively. Their goaltending situation has not been great.
Yeah, so the potential is there for Boqvist. I think he could be a huge addition. Could be a flop. There is the potential there, but again, we're gonna remain optimistic and hopefully he can find his footing here with Florida.
Honestly, there's not even as far as Florida's concerned, there's not even really a chance he could be a flop. If he does nothing, he was signed to a 1-year $775K deal. If it doesn't work, you say fuck it, dump it, go sit in the AHL. We're gonna find somebody else to fill it.
It's literally zero risk, high reward. It was a great signing. I'm surprised there weren't more teams sniffing around him because it sounds like there wasn't a big market for him. So maybe
which
Florida's
is
gonna
crazy. Like
show up a lot of
I
people.
I remember the hype around him before. I definitely thought his stats were gonna look worse than this. Like
Yeah, right.
56 points in what? Oh, that's with just that. 85 points in 209 NHL games. That's
Yeah.
knocking on the door of half a point per game. That's like on average over his career, like 30, 35 point per season pace. Like that, you know,
Yeah.
he's a minus 41 on his career, fine, but over 5 years with Chicago and Columbus, you can't really fault him for that. Like,
Yeah.
the only thing I'm really seeing here is he doesn't do a ton of hitting. He does a decent bit of blocking, but at the same time, not everyone does. He does have a lot more giveaways than takeaways. And I don't know if that's just him or if that's par for the course for a lot of defensemen, but he does have, over his career, 115 giveaways and 46 takeaways. So he's doubling his takeaways on giveaways, and that's not what you want from your defenseman, but I don't know. He's still young. He's what, 23, 24? Like, they can definitely turn his career around. The more we look into it, I'm annoyed that Florida's the team that jumped on this.
Yeah, I think the potential is there for that to be a really good signing for them. And then lastly, with Florida, the goalies, great starter and backup. They have Sergei Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight. I think the most expensive goalie tandem in the league. I'd be shocked if there's a team paying two goalies combined
14
more.
and a half. Yeah, 14 and a half mil. It's got to be pretty close. And
like that's a great, like, Bobrovsky, we know he's elite. One of the best playoff performing goalies in the last couple of years, and then Spencer Knight. Hoping he's doing better now, and I think when he's on his game, he'll be one of the better backups in the league.
Yeah, it really depends how he develops, because, like you said, goalies generally take the longest to develop, and he's also been in and out of the players' assistance programs, which means he's got his own personal stuff going on. Dude's only 23. Like, if he has that high end talent that a lot of people really thought he had for a while there, like, he might just come out when he's 25, 26, and he might just be one of the best goalies in the league, like, out of nowhere. Like, it could still happen.
It's very realistic.
It doesn't look like it at the moment, but he's definitely still young enough that it could change at a moment's notice. Not for nothing as well, I do believe I don't know if it doesn't look like he's signed, but I believe they gave a PTO to Chris Driedger.
Yeah, they did. They did bring Driedger back into the fold.
And I definitely don't mind that. I thought Chris Driedger was going to be this, as soon as he got claimed in the expansion draft by Seattle, I thought he was going to be their starter. Yeah. I remember he was a phenomenal backup that year, and it really looked like, I thought they were crazy for not trying to get rid of Bobrovsky somehow and try and keep Driedger or something, and then they also had Knight, but, like, obviously he hasn't panned out quite that way. Yeah, and in that season with the Panthers, he had a .927 save percentage.
Yeah.
But, like, last year he had a .917. It was, well, okay. To be fair, that was in 2 games, so hard to tell, but he also had a .917 in the AHL last year in 39 games with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. So, I definitely still think he can be at least NHL caliber goaltender, like, at the very least a backup. So I do wonder what the thought process is of the PTO, just because,
and maybe Spencer Knight's not ready to come back yet,
and I wonder if that's got to be it, because,
or maybe they're not sure where he's going to be at. Like, maybe he isn't having the greatest going preseason. He needs time in the AHL. So
do you just bury that 4.5 though? They're wanting to win a cup right now. Like, are you going to sign?
I mean, you might have to.
Are you going to sign Drieger to some money and take up even more cap space?
Well, Drieger, if Drieger's on a PTO and signs, like it's going to be league min. Like Drieger's been an AHL guy the last couple years, so he can't be commanding anything more than $1 million. Unfortunately for him at this point. So, and it's always better to have options
the minor league contracts work, I guess.
Put all your eggs into hoping Spencer Knight's ready to go, and then if he's not, then you're a little bit in trouble. And if he is, then it's just thanks for coming out, Drees. Like, see you later.
So because right now the Florida Panthers are projected to have $158,000 over the cap. So, like, if they sign Chris Drieger to whatever league minimum is, like $775,000 or whatever, is there a way where that doesn't count against the cap, or does it just count less when he's in the AHL?
If it's a 2-year, then it won't, a 2-way, then it won't count in the AHL.
Okay.
Because then he'll be making AHL money, so it would be like he'd be making like maybe 100,000 or something.
Right.
In the AHL. So yeah, it wouldn't count towards the cap, which again, if he signs, I'm assuming it's probably a 2-way contract.
Okay, makes sense. I know there's the whole 1-way, 2-way contract that they have in the EA Sports NHL games, and I know those aren't fully accurate, but there's like based in truth, so I always forget how that works. But yeah, we'll see if they do anything with him, because if they don't, Spencer Knight looks ready to go and they don't sign him, I don't doubt that some team's going to pick him up, even just to have him in the AHL and, see if they need him or he can improve and become something, because he has shown flashes of brilliance in the past.
Mm-hmm. And at this point in time right now, even if you just sign Drieger to a $1.5 million for 1 year or something, like I don't think there's a team that's going to be willing to trade for Spencer Knight right now anyways, even if Florida decide they wanted to move on from him. So that's going to be a big thing surrounding them in the preseason, whatnot, is how that's going to work, and where Spencer Knight's at coming into training camp. But all roads lead back to the same 2 questions. I'm assuming we're on the same page for the first one, but I will ask you to double check. Are the Florida Panthers a playoff team this season?
Yes, they are. I cannot see this team missing.
They're 100%. They're 100% making it. Well, not 100%, but like 99.
Yeah.
And a half.
You always got to say 99 because sometimes teams just get bombarded with injuries.
Unless it's Boston. Boston.
No, yeah, Boston 100% makes it.
They're the one lock always. The one lock always. Florida's making the playoffs. I'm saying they are. Especially with defending Cup champs, might start off the season a bit slow. We've seen that happen before teams. But
last time I said that about skill and Boston, they put up 65 wins on the season. So
yeah, this team's got too much skill to not be in the playoffs. Like, again, I don't know if necessarily they win their division or whatnot, but regardless, I do see them.
Nobody's going to win in this division.
Ending up in the playoffs. And lastly, one player. I have a feeling I know who you're going to pick, maybe. One player, one individual award. Who you got?
I tell you what, I don't want to pick him, but there's just nothing else that makes sense. I got to go Alexander Barkov for the Selke. I'd love to try and make a case for Matthew Tkachuk for Hart or something. Maybe even Bobrovsky for Vezina, if he can keep it up. But no, but Barkov for Selke is easily the most likely.
Well, you did say mine there. To keep it nice and fresh and switch it up a little bit. My pick that I'm going with is Matthew Tkachuk for the Hart. Nice. I think he was starting to make a very solid case to be in that conversation. His last year with the Flames, his first year with the Panthers. This past year, maybe a bit of a down year, but again, I think people are looking into that a little bit too deep. Like, again, he did play 80 games, so he played basically the whole year, and he was just coming off a long playoff run where he eventually just was forced to sit out by the coach because, again, like he had a broken sternum and whatnot. Like, he had so many bad injuries, and so I don't think he was in the best shape coming into last season. But I don't know what shape he's necessarily going to be in after all the partying this offseason. But I like the odds of maybe Matthew Tkachuk getting back up to that, really dominating. And I think if he gets a chance and, maybe a little bit better line mates instead of having to carry a line on his own, I like the chance of him potentially winning the Hart.
He's never played with better line mates in Florida than he did in Calgary.
Than he did with Calgary, yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to say. Like
I would love to see him get the chance with.
Bro, if he wanted to play with Sam Bennett, he could have dropped down to the third line when he was in Calgary. I love Verhaeghe on that top line with Barkov and Reinhart, but I think Tkachuk could be so much fun playing with those two, and I think the sky could be the limit for him with those guys. But I do understand why he's not up there. I do get it. Verhaeghe works really well there, but you never know. Maybe Florida tries to shake it up and try something new. Yeah. Or you know what? Honestly, I almost think they should swap, because I do think you want Barkov and Tkachuk on separate lines, because I think they are both great play drivers. And I almost think it would be better if they swapped Rodriguez and Reinhart, and then you're running Tkachuk, Bennett, Reinhart, and you got a bit more talent, just raw talent with Tkachuk there, and then you still have Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Rodriguez. I still think that's a top tier first line. Maybe spreads it out a little bit more, but hey, you know what? They just won the cup, so what do we know, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? There's never know, but that's what I'm going with. Yeah. But that does wrap up everything with the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Wasn't the easiest episode for us, but we did soldier on like a couple of brave boys and get to the end of it here. But we do have the usual. We're something. We're something, that's for sure.
We're something, boys.
But we do have the usual now here at the very end. We're getting down to the wire here. Not many teams left, but it is that time to pick which teams we will be covering in the next episode you guys will be listening to on Friday.
Yeah.
Brayden, I'll give you the pick out of this slim picking list.
If you're giving me the pick, that means you're okay with me taking the team you're going to say.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I just want it on record for when I inevitably pick your team.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, then, next episode, I will be covering the New Jersey Devils.
The New Jersey Devils. I like it. I was not going to pick
I'm surprised we
New
haven't
Jersey
done
Devils. Well, I was going to in the one. I think it was like our second or third. But then I quickly switched. I went to Boston because Boston always makes the playoffs. So you will be doing the New Jersey Devils.
And who will you be doing? He's going to do it.
I'm just going to double check our schedule here for what we're looking at for days. Because what do we have? If we take 2 off here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1 there. 1 there. 1 there. 1 there. So we're getting down to crunch time.
I was say, if we have to do 1 or 2 extra episodes a week to fit them all in before the start of the season, we might have to do it.
Well, no, because kind of just a breakdown of how this is going to go. So after today, like after we pick, now we have, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We only have 10. So like 5 episodes left. So we do have the one coming out on Friday. So we're down to 8. Next Tuesday, we're down to 6. Next Friday, we'll be down to 4. We do have that special one that we will be doing over that weekend. That'll probably maybe be coming out like a special one on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday. So like we've only got like about 2 weeks left.
About 2 weeks.
Going through this, and then at that point we're right in the middle of preseason, and we're starting to dive into regular season. So it lines up really well. So you will be doing the New Jersey Devils, and I will be doing none other than the Washington Capitals. The great eight Alexander Ovechkin and his mediocre crew.
His gang of merry men.
Because we do have a lot of Metro teams still left to cover here. So we will be knocking 2 off the board there. Potentially 2 playoff teams. Potentially. We could be doing 2 playoff teams in in one episode. If one of these teams makes the playoffs, they will for sure be getting swept. But I think that wraps up about everything we have here. Braden, do you have anything left you want to slap on the table before we go our separate ways?
No, I think we covered it pretty good. We talked a lot about teams that neither of us are incredibly fond of, but unfortunately they are both very good teams. So congrats to them on their cup wins. And I'm excited to talk about the Devils next time.
Yeah, and like we said, we powered through because we are brave boys. We are looking forward to continuing on with the last few teams here. And then before you know it, we are getting into regular season action again as it is quickly approaching upon us. So once again, if you want to talk hockey, join in on any of the conversations. All of the links to our socials will be down in the description of whatever platform you're listening to this on. So feel free to come talk hockey with us. And other than that, I think that's about it. We do thank you guys for listening. We will see you guys on Friday when we cover the New Jersey Devils and the Washington Capitals.